do you feel?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you all today. It is always gratifying to be stood in front of so many dedicated professionals who, before they are starting their busy new academic year, take the time to think about what are the most important questions. And I think this alone is such a positive exercise and something that other countries could also benefit and learn from you. So thank you for already doing what you do, and we can share this with others. I want to thank warmly the Ministry for the invitation to come here. I wish that we were able to present the full report, and I apologise that we're not in the situation to do that, but we have a lot of very rich information that we are compiling and analysing and carefully putting together to make sure there's a balanced overview in this report. But there is a lot of international information and evidence that is already publicly available, and today I want to highlight some of these points to you. So I want to first of all very quickly talk about the OECD and this particular review of school resources and where that fits into our work. Then I want to talk about, in general, for the countries who are participating in our review, what are the main concerns? What have they asked us to look at specifically? And you'll see there are some common concerns among countries. Then I want to look at key challenges internationally and for Lithuania in each of these particular areas. So I work for the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, and the OECD has the mission to promote policies that will improve the economic and social well-being of people around the world. What an ambitious mission that is. This, of course, happens by collaboration, active participation. The ministries, the governments are our counterparts, and our members are 34 countries. But we have various arms and divisions that look into different fields and engage different levels of stakeholders. It doesn't just stay at the ministry policy level. We have much research, we have much data collection, and we also have policy missions, which is what I will talk to you about. Lithuania is currently in discussion with the OECD Council for accession to become a full member of the OECD. So this is happening, and the invitation was formally extended in April this year. Participation in different projects in our work is a very important part of this, and Lithuania has been a member of the Programme for International Student Assessment. Many of the results that the Minister was talking to you about today that you are very familiar with, and thank you for your efforts to administer these assessments and to help gather this information. It really helps the international analysis as well. We learn from every participating country. We have sort of a data collection arm. One of the other surveys we do is asking teachers about their opinions, feedbacks on their experiences, professional collaboration, opportunities to learn, workload, this sort of thing. And Lithuania participated in a survey, the first one, which was in 2008. The second was 2013. Lithuania did not participate, but we're hopeful that you will be engaged in future surveys. The second arm of the education work is on research, thinking about the future, scenarios, trends, what's impacting the society, and how schools are being impacted by global trends and changes. And this is enormous and cannot be understated in any of the countries, and also particularly here in Lithuania. Your schooling context has disproportionately changed around you. The third and important arm of our work in education are the policy reviews, where we look more at what policy choices countries are making. While we have no mandate or power or authority to come and say, Minister, you should do X, Y, or Z, this is not our job. What we do is to look in a comparative way at different policies, try to look at different research that's out there, and to see what are most promising in particular contexts. What's the idea of coming to the country to look more in depth at your particular challenges and contexts, and what's going well here and what we should continue to do more of, and to support that, because often we overlook, we just look at the problems and we overlook about your successes and what you're really doing well already. So this should not be taken for granted. The current review is the School Resources Review. Now, this is aiming to answer the question of what policies best ensure that school resources are effectively used to improve student outcomes. This is a very ambitious task. The resources we look at are, of course, funding, the financial resources. We also look at the very important human resources, the key delivery of the teachers, the wider personnel, the assistants in schools, the leadership structures and how school leaders are trained and developed. All of these aspects are looked at in this review, as well as looking at physical material resources, availability of different educational equipment, different means that can help to deliver better student outcomes. So this is huge, it's everything. It's at the early childhood stage and it's at the schooling stage. We do not look at higher education. That's the only thing that's not in this review. Across these inputs, we think about how each of these are distributed, how they are allocated to different parts. The very first decisions that you make as a country, how much of our limited amount of money goes to higher education, how much goes to lower secondary education, how much goes to primary schooling, how much goes to early childhood. Those first decisions reflect national priorities. And different countries do this at different times. They make different decisions to put more into each of those sectors. Sectors including general education, vocational education, all of these first decisions that are made. Also, allocating resources to different student groups. Now, here you have a very strong support of mother tongue instruction in minority languages, which many countries don't resource and invest. It's something you should be also very proud of here. This is a choice. There are different policies that can be aimed at socio-economic differences in different students, different educational needs, including for special education. So all of these different ideas and choices that you make of how you distribute the money, how you distribute the teachers and the support, and the access to different materials for these different kinds of students. Then, of course, the most important part is, once you've got this, how do we use it? This is that gets to the question of the effective use. How can we do more with less? The ideal, get more out of what we have. The ideal is, of course, to have more investment and to have more to use. But often, many countries, and you're by no means an exception, have a limited amount, and you have to make more effective use of what you have. So this is what we aim, the countries who have engaged at the OECD, aim to get some light, some insight as to how things can be done a bit differently. And we will be producing a report specifically for Lithuania by the end of this year, and I hope that you will all be having the opportunity to learn what the Minister had talked about this morning, what Aidas and his group do, all the evaluation, external evaluation, the evaluation within the schools, the self-evaluation and monitoring, and at the municipal level, how you ensure that your group of schools, or your individual school, depending on how big a municipality you are, how things are working there and how you're setting objectives to improve things in the future. Okay. So there are 16 countries participating, and you can see that we came here in December last year and met with many of you. Now, the column on the right shows what the countries have already produced as part of this. The countries have made a report where they've asked for different national statistics, got different stakeholders involved to reflect their input. And we're very pleased to say that the Lithuanian report is one of the first that's been published, and it's up there available now for all of our countries to read and to learn from. So thank you already for that very important product. So, out of those big areas, we ask countries to prioritise what's most important. What should we look at? Now, within the 11 existing reviews that we've already conducted, every single country asked us to look at the school funding, to look at the idea of funding formulas, whether there is one to start with. Not all countries have such a transparent and objective approach to funding as you do here in Lithuania. So already that's a very strong point in your favour, that there is a transparent mechanism that is clear and everyone understands the rules of this. Looking into funding for special needs education, looking at how vocational education and training is funded, and the specific issues there about modernisation, making sure there's enough connection with the work-based learning elements and components. This is huge, and some countries are really struggling with a lot of older infrastructure. So there are specific resource issues in the vocational area. Also, the organisation of the school network. Now, we say network internationally to mean physical infrastructure, numbers of schools, location of schools, different kinds of buildings and offers, but also the educational content and provision, what the children have the access to learn, what opportunities they have for learning, the different choices of subjects they can learn from, the different educational opportunities they have, and to what extent these opportunities are equal depending on where they live within a system. So all of these questions are very important. The management of the human resources is of key importance to all countries. The OECD has published several reports already which say that you cannot underestimate the importance of the quality of teachers. I mean, it sounds so simplistic, but we have to repeat this message about the quality of the teaching is really the key to, it's the key resource for changing and influencing student outcomes. The other important aspect is governance. Now, this is tricky because governance, by definition, is a national concern, but you can see that different governance structures pose different opportunities and challenges depending on the country. So this also makes a difference as to what's feasible, what's possible. So something that's happening in Finland, often people look at that because they do quite consistently well within the European countries in PISA, but it might not necessarily make sense in a different governance context. Now here, one of the big roles points in governance is that there's quite a nice distribution of responsibilities through your system. The ministry has the policy envelope, regulations, guidelines, curriculum, content. The municipalities get to influence the organisational aspects and also to have a strategic oversight of the quality. We would like, to see that as a big part of your responsibilities. And the schools have quite a lot of autonomy in international comparison over the important aspects such as recruitment of staff, being able to get the right fit to assess their student group needs. So there are many aspects here in governance where there's a nice distribution. It already lends itself to active collaboration. All of you have an important role to play, so it's a very important context here. So funding, the first big international challenge is securing adequate levels of funding. Now, this is a very simple presentation of bit of information. It's just showing you the results on PISA 2012, in this case the mathematics assessment, because children did most questions in mathematics. It's the biggest part of the test. And the performance is on the y-axis here. So higher up is a better performance, and lower down is a weaker performance. And this x-axis is showing the cumulative expenditure from the age 6 to 15 that countries have invested in their students. And all of these prices are adjusted so they're comparable. Now, you can see, if you'd say, well, the more money you put in, the better the results, you would have this yellow dotted line going like this, diagonally across, because it shows lower money, lower results, higher money, better results. As you can see, it's not that clear a picture at all. In fact, there is no relationship across countries between money and results. So, this doesn't mean that money's not important, that investment's not important. What it does mean is that, for example, you can get very different levels of results. This is one simple indicator, one simple measure of the PISA outcomes. There's many more outcomes which are very important, but it's an indicator of you can get different levels of results with similar amounts of investment. Look at Estonia, that has got about the same level of investment as the Czech Republic. If you go down, Czech Republic, Slovak Republic, Israel, similar in international comparison, similar levels of investment, but Estonia is getting much better outcomes. So there are ways that countries can sort of be inspired to see what are you doing. Now, the picture is a little less clear when you look at below a certain level of investment. Now, internationally, we made this below the level of 50,000 American dollars. Now, so Lithuania sits here, and you can see here the white bar showing the association correlation is positive. There's a positive correlation. So a certain amount of investment is critical, that you do need an adequate level of funding. In systems that are very underfunded, clearly this is part of the challenge they have in raising their educational outcomes. So money is not everything. The effective use of money is the most important, but you do need adequate levels of investment. So that's a very nice point to make, but of course every country comes back to their national context and the concerns of how do we increase financial resources for education. This is a challenge that all countries face. Public revenues are not growing generally Europe-wide. There's limited ways of raising more money via taxation. There's limited or dwindling natural resources. So how do we raise more money? How do we liberate more funds? There's also the idea of ageing societies, and when you've got a social pocket for money, that health and pensions and security, all of these questions are extremely important and they grow even more pressing. So education starts to have a higher voice and stronger voice to earn its part of the national money pot. So all of these sort of relative importance questions are key to all countries. It's always a challenge. Hence the indicator that everyone gives a lot of importance to, which is the proportion of national income, GDP, that education represents. And I know that when we were here in December, everybody mentioned this to us and said, we need this to be higher, we need a stronger proportion, we need more investment against GDP. Now, low levels of funding have, of course, a range of implications. There are low salaries for teachers and school leaders. If you want to say the very first point is that teacher quality, the quality of the people in the classes delivering the instruction to your children are the most important, then you need to be able to attract high quality and calibre and dedicated professionals. Now, any dedicated pedagogue will say, you know, it's a vocation, it's not just about money. However, we have to be realistic about the status of the profession and their ability to survive and to continue the profession that they enjoy and love and dedicate themselves to. So, salaries are a very, very important part of this attractive package. Many systems are looking at how they can increase the provision at pre-primary level. This is a big concern. Also, not just access and numbers of participation, but ensuring that the quality is strong. We had a big international review for over many years, and the results were published in 2010 on really emphasising the importance of the quality of the care that's given at the younger age. So both those aspects, access to high-quality educational provision at a younger age, very important for getting things right early intervention, which is most efficient for improvement of chances for the child throughout his or her schooling. If you have low levels of funding, there's also the concern of low investment in professional development. The teachers who are there, active, the changing demands around their professional daily lives, they need to have access to good professional development and relevant professional development. This shouldn't be overlooked, and that's a very important continued investment. Now, if we look at the resources available in international comparison, this is the national income, the GDP per capita per individual here in the country. So for Lithuania, it's a lot lower than the OECD average, so that's already the biggest contextual constraint that you have, that the national income per inhabitant is much lower than on average in the OECD countries. Second indicator for international comparison is how much are you choosing to invest in education, and this represents the cumulative expenditure between ages 6 and 15. It was the plot on the X of the very first graph I showed you, and here you can see that it's considerably less in Lithuania than it is on average in the OECD, and even sort of neighbouring countries you have from Estonia to Czech Republic, Slovak Republic, Hungary, Latvia, have all got below average investment, but slightly above what you're investing or have been investing over past years per student in education over recent years in Lithuania. Now, hypothetically, when you've got all these data, you can do lots of fancy things and you can come out with all manner of nonsense and bad messages. So let's be cautious about this. But if you hypothetically adjust, and if you were to invest the same amount per student as is invested on average in the OECD, already that would give an upward adjustment of your average performance to around the OECD level. So there again, highlighting this point about money is not everything, but adequate level of funding is extremely important. So here, what's been happening, the trends in expenditure. The yellow bar is showing, I'm sure you're all more than familiar with this, the yellow bar is showing the total state budget expenditure. I haven't converted this to the new euros, I'm sorry. And the green line is showing this relative to GDP. Now, it looks like GDP, it looks like, looking at the green pattern, it looks like, well, education is less important then because we've got less of a percentage against GDP. So it's very important to be clear that between 2009 and 2010, that's the most recent international data we have. We'll have more in September, more recent in September, but we saw a very similar situation across OECD countries. In 1/3 of the countries, expenditure on education fell, but GDP was increasing in real terms. So the green dot in many countries was also lowering. It doesn't necessarily show a less of a importance given nationally to education. Here, something that's been extremely important is the school network, and in terms of the number and supply and number of schools and number of teaching staff, it's been a huge concern on your agendas over the last 10 years or so. And we have learned a lot from you that we can share with other countries who are now starting to face similar challenges. But we're not just looking at the numbers, we're looking at demographic changes which, of course, impact the numbers of children and who your clients are. But also there's a nature of different populations coming into the country, so you've got more diverse backgrounds and cultures. So all of these challenges exist in all of the countries, but to greater or lesser degrees. And some countries are struggling with not having enough places and having a much more diverse student background, so they've got their own challenges in their offer of the school network. In Lithuania, it still remains very much the efficiency question of the school consolidation. But the second part of this is the actual offer of the opportunity for children to learn. Now, this is very much impacted by societal evolutions, and we had that last quote about how education was set out to reform. That's so important because it shows you the higher objectives, and that's what we're aiming towards. That absolutely impacts on your decisions of the educational offer, what you want to prioritise, what you need to then invest in and to provide. So all of that's extremely important to remember in any of these countries. But something we've seen Europe-wide is curricular innovations, the idea of 21st century skills, the idea that it's just not knowledge, it's skills, competencies, attitudes, how children apply their knowledge. These innovations have come in Europe-wide, and it's posed big challenges for those who offer education and those who develop the teachers who have to deliver this education. I'll come back to that later, but just wanted to remind you of this is the demographic trends in the OECD countries on the right and scaled to the demographic challenges that you have faced here in Lithuania. So you should not underestimate the enormity of the challenge you've been faced with. And I know it's easy to sort of be frustrated with, we're always looking at efficiency, it's such a difficult question about school consolidation, network consolidations, considerations of qualities of schools and which schools may have to close. Horrible questions that nobody wants to look at, but look at the scale of the challenge you've had compared to, on average, internationally. So I say a big congratulations for what you have achieved over the last 10 years. If you just look in pure number terms, I'm sure there are as many personal and professional stories behind this. But if you just look in number terms, from 2013 compared to 2005, there was a drop of students by 35%. At the same time, you've made adjustments. There are 21% fewer schools, 23% fewer teaching staff. You've made adjustments to try to meet this enormous challenge. This corresponds to a student-teacher ratio, which of course is less efficient because it's dropped from 13.9 students per teacher to 11.8 students per teacher in 2013. But had you not done any of those adjustments, had you not addressed these challenges, it would have been as low as 9.1 students per teacher, which is just far more inefficient than, would have been around the levels of the least efficient indicators we see internationally. So congratulations on taking that seriously, for stepping up to the challenge and to making this an important part of your work. Now you're looking a lot more favourable than had you not made this effort. These data come for us from reports from school leaders from each country, so they're not administrative data, they're an insight, but they're pretty strong in correlation against the national data, so it's a good overview of how you compare. However, the efficiency is still pressing, as we see. This doesn't go away. There's still demographic decline, especially at the coming into upper secondary age, 15 to 19. So this is still remains a challenge. So efficiency stays on the agenda. However, quality has to, I think in our analysis we're looking at, has to really take more prominence and have more attention now. Providing children with access to good quality pre-primary in rural and urban areas. Now the Minister presented some of the PISA data that 15-year-old children had reported what their experience was 10 years ago, if they could remember. So like the figures from 10 years ago in Lithuania suggest, from what the children report, that there were big differences in their access to and participation in early childhood between rural and urban areas. I apologise I don't have the data, but it was something in the order of 80% in urban areas did attend early childhood education and around 20% in rural areas. Now, I can provide the real figures, but it was a very significant difference as reported by the children. Ensuring a challenging curriculum, thinking about why we're doing this, why are we educating our children. There's a big competitive world now, we're all interlinked. How are they going to fare when they have to survive out there as adults and contribute to our society and beyond? So more challenging curricula, making sure that to what extent all children have access to such challenging curricula and educational experiences, because that is a fundamental equity argument. It's about giving each child born in Lithuania, regardless of where, access and the opportunity to access these future challenges and to meet these future challenges. The school network considerations also have quality issues about the professional experiences for teachers. Now, it's interesting to me that the 2015-16 school year, the theme is communities. I think this is fantastic. I think it should be the theme every year. I very much support the collaboration spirit, the idea that everyone has their own perspective and that somewhere in between you test and challenge each other and somewhere you get the good compromise and the right way to go forward. Teaching can be a very lonely job, and you keep saying you need to improve this, you need to change this. All countries struggle with giving enough professional collaboration opportunity to their teachers. Now, we see this from the international survey, Teaching and Learning International Survey, the TALIS data. You can see that teachers that are in schools that have more collaboration, have greater professional learning communities, they are participating more in professional development. There's a big association, correlation with more professional engagement, more feedback, more collaboration, and all of these things, that's just, they report they do this, but all of those aspects we would expect to lead to challenging yourself, improving yourself, and becoming a better professional. Professional development is not just about going away for 2 days to study a course and get a credit on X, Y, Z. Content refreshment is extremely important, but professional collaboration happens. The main opportunity is within the schools and the structures and the responsibilities and the roles that are assigned to different teaching staff and their ability and their opportunity to work with each other and to learn from each other and to bring each other on. That's where the big professional development happens. Now, in all countries, making time for that to happen is a very big challenge. But I think there's an even greater challenge when you are in a system where the pay is very much associated to the number of contact hours and pedagogical hours associated afterwards may or may not be used for collaboration. This is something that happens at the school level, and the schools control this. But I would encourage at the municipal level that you promote this strongly, that collaboration, the use of those professional pedagogical hours, there is an adequate attention to collaboration, learning, and checking on. One tool is to look at the student results and to discuss those and how you're going, but there are other ways of getting together on professional exchange and collaboration over useful things, though, not just to get together in a staff room and have a cup of tea and talk about, whatever. Structured meetings. At the OECD, we have many meetings which are of no use at all. We don't learn from them. It's a waste of time. It has to be about something, on content, on target. So make it about how are the children learning, what are the signs, where are things going really well, what's the teacher been doing with that class? They're really looking like they're doing well here. What can we do elsewhere in the school? This kind of professional exchange and collaboration around student results, student learning. The human management aspect is a big challenge in all countries. For many, it's multifaceted, the challenge. Teaching has become a less popular choice among young people in many countries. So countries for many years have been asking the OECD, how can we improve the status of the profession and what do we need to do to address this? Part of the blame is in how teaching is talked about in media, in society in general. So part of your role can be to actually be supportive in, teaching is of key importance. Our teachers are our most important resource, and we need to make sure we're getting the best out of them, and they give us their best, and they teach us what we could do better elsewhere as well. They give us ideas, and they lead it as professionals. So part of your discourse and your responsibility is to absolutely underline the key resources you have are your staff, and you need to make sure that staff resource is fitting and meeting the needs of the young people in the schools and making sure that's up to date. So it's sort of twofold. So that's the first part. There's, of course, the competitiveness of salaries compared to other professions in the country. And we've seen in many countries there are national indicators. I haven't got them here to show you, but broadly there's a lot of European level data on this that shows the salaries, minimum and maximum salaries compared to GDP per capita, and in Lithuania you're slightly below the per capita. So on that basic indicator, it looks like if it's just about a financial choice, it's not such an attractive option. So paying attention to overall salary levels still remains important. That's an important challenge in this country and in other countries. Differences in working conditions and salaries for different staff categories. Looking at, now often internationally we see this between assistant staff and fully qualified teachers, maintenance, operational staff in schools that help the daily running of the school and the teaching professionals. But something we're looking at into our analysis here in Lithuania is a concern that we find with differences of income between very, very well-established teachers and the newer teachers just coming in, and quite a significant income difference there that we see with national data on average. Of course, that masks a whole different range of experiences in different schools, but that's something that we find a concern, and we'll be elaborating some recommendations around that, given that a key challenge appears to be attracting in enough new dynamic young people to come in to teach. Many countries are concerned about the imminent retirement wave. Many countries have, well, the majority of countries have a highly feminized workforce, teaching workforce, so there are concerns about attracting men into the profession, not just into leadership positions. Often we see better balance of men and women at the leadership level, but not at the teaching level, and often it goes that the earlier the education level, early childhood, primary, lower secondary, the fewer men there are at the lower levels of education provision. So this is something that's shared in all countries, these challenges. Now, in Lithuania, if you look at the data on the age, it certainly shows a significant challenge about an imminent retirement wave coming from your teacher workforce. I've highlighted Lithuania's here, 6 bars from the left. It's highlighted in green. Now, the top part of this graph shows the older workforce. The black is 60 years or above, and the light grey is 50 years, 50 to 59 years. So these bars show the aging of the teacher and the imminent potential wave for retirement. And you can see that Lithuania is, compared to average, has a more challenging situation there about the amount of teachers that are professionals that will be, in a few years, leaving the profession. The red here, the first red bar, is the European average, because this is a very common challenge in European countries as well, on average. Not so much for other countries that are part of the non-European members of the OECD. So the OECD average is actually fairly healthier in this respect. As you can see here, there's about 35% of the teachers that are of age 50 or above. So there's more even distribution in age across the OECD in general. So it's more challenging in Europe in general. It's a particular challenge in Lithuania, and if you look at the bottom part, the green, light green and the yellow bar are showing you the younger teachers. The green part is showing teachers who are under the age of 30, and the light yellow bar is showing teachers from 30 to 39. So this is your new talent coming in to re-dynamize the workforce and the provision, learning from the experience of the existing teachers, but bringing in new ideas. And this is quite low compared to in other countries. So there's a challenge here about attracting sufficient new life into the teaching workforce. Another insight to that was in an international survey run by the IEA, and this was from the Trends in International Mathematics and Science Study, and we asked for a completion of information by school leaders. And this is the reports that we have, that at year 4, this is showing you the percentage of teachers with less than 5 years' experience, the very new teachers. And in year 4, this was minimal in Lithuania, compared to an international average of around 14%. And in year 8, it was just about 6% in Lithuania, compared to an international 20%. So much less renewed talent coming into the teacher workforce. You can see there internationally. So to recap, the major challenges from an international perspective: don't overlook the importance of the overall level of investment. It's not all about the money, but you do need to have adequate investment, including making the teacher salary package attractive enough. The efficiency of the school network remains a concern that hasn't disappeared. You've risen to the challenge and you've addressed this in an admirable way, but you need to carry on with that. You can't get frustrated and lose. That has to continue your efforts there. But this is double-fold. You also have to look at the quality of the educational offer. And I'm encouraged to hear about some new ideas that the ministry has that might be coming in next year. I'll study these, but it's good that there's more attention coming to quality. And the third part is investing in the future. Investing in the future, the teachers, the teacher workforce, the people who are going to be delivering education to your children are of key importance. Adapting to the evolving demands of what's expected of them and preparing them adequately to meet those demands and continuing to invest in them when they are teaching. Those are the main priorities that we can see from the international indicators. The resources review, everything is published that's out already on our top website, including the country background report for Lithuania. I encourage you all to see this. And I just wanted to say a thank you again, because I know that some of you in the room had actually welcomed me and the team and given a generous amount of your time and lots of information. So thank you. And we are hard at work finalising that so that you'll be able to learn from our full analysis and results. Thank you very much.